It was great! I can't imagine why you would click on this video if you didn't already know about Steven Universe the movie, but I'm gonna give y'all a quick rundown all the same. There's a movie now. It's set 2 years after the season 5 finale Change Your Mind. It's about a new villain, Spinel, showing up, and she has a scythe that, as Parados literally says, resets character development. Wait, I forgot. I have a thing on under this. You clods! And I've got my mug here, my Stets Uni new mug. Beep. So anyway, in the movie, Pearl is reverted to being obsessively servile and not thinking about herself. Garnet is restored back to being Ruby and Sapphire separated and they don't remember each other. Amethyst has more identity issues than ever. The result is a coda for the entire show that slams each character's journey into a concentrated burst. It's like speedrunning therapy.
Hi, Loafers from the future here. I was unclear here. There is more Steven Universe coming. We just don't know what that's going to be. Steven's character arc is very done. Same for basically every other character. We've run out of road. I'm guessing future Steven Universe will look radically different, so I'm treating this movie as the end of a story, if not the story. I hope this makes sense.
This approach hasn't been welcomed by everyone. Uncivilized Elk on YouTube has described the movie as retreading the core plot points that has already happened.
The entire movie's premise is self-admittedly retreading all the core plot points that have already happened throughout the series. This is the story of my life!
The problem with this criticism is that they just state this basically correct fact about the movie in a derogatory tone of voice, then don't explain why that's a bad thing. Steven Universe the movie is comparable to Downton Abbey the movie, or Avengers Endgame, in that it's basically a Christmas special, except, you know, without the Christmas. Darren Mooney describes Christmas specials like this. The goal is something approaching celebratory nostalgia for the objects in question. A light story populated by familiar characters in comfortable surroundings. The budget is typically larger. There's typically some weighty emotional import, but coupled with a sense that nothing too dangerous is happening. The shoe fits. This approach to doing a Steven Universe movie works as long as you engage with it on its own terms. Shafrila's Productions complains about the sense that nothing too dangerous is happening, that Spinel is a weaker villain than usual.
The stakes feel relatively lower than usual, if we're being honest. These peeps have already saved the world multiple times, so doing another one of these plotlines with a less powerful threat doesn't exactly justify this whole the movie thing they've got going on. Like, you know those Fairly OddParents TV movies? Those were epic. You really have to do something drastic to heighten the weight of the events unfolding in this movie. And they didn't really do that.
There are a few problems with this idea. It reminds me of the old chestnut of Supernatural going from fighting the devil to fighting the devil's more powerful brother who's never been mentioned before.
You and me versus every soul in hell.
More to the point, a movie doesn't have to set the heroes up against their most powerful enemy or most dangerous situation yet. If Steven suddenly had to deal with, like, Unicron or Galactus or something, it would make everything with the Gem homeworld, the entire plot of the show, feel pointless by comparison. The movie wisely avoids this and goes for a coda instead, and even if you hoped for the biggest deal ever, you just have to accept that's not what the film is trying to do, and it's silly to expect otherwise just because it's what Fairly OddParents did over a decade ago. Taken on its own terms, the film is a joy. At 82 minutes, it's slight but dense, and paced like a barnstorming romp. The animation has received an appreciable budget bump. There's more shading now. All the many voice actors shine as bright as we've come to expect over the years. Each of the many songs is a triumph and never proved grating in the way these ventures can end up being. I'm glad that it dwelled on the show's strengths rather than its minor weaknesses. Those strengths have always been character, theme, and music, among other things. Much of the show has been about characters dealing with grief and loss. Those ideas are alive and well in Spinel. Steven finds himself paying for his mother's misdeeds. This is, to make a long story short, consistent with what has come before. Better yet, the movie skimps on the show's shortcomings. If you go internet spelunking onto this website called Virtual Citizens, then you can find a good few reviews of the late season 5 episodes where I complain that Steven Universe doesn't really know how to write evil, implicitly fascist tyrants. Well, you can find lots of that kind of thing on the internet, but I try to err on the side of generosity. Put simply, the idea that you can overthrow an evil regime by befriending the people who were in charge of it doesn't land because it's just so far away from how you would actually go about dealing with that kind of a thing. Think of our girl here, think of Peridot and her redemption arc, the best part of the show. It works in part because she's the IT girl. She thinks what she thinks because it's what she was told to think, and it's much easier to buy that she's being redeemed because she doesn't have any political power in the first place. This isn't true for the Diamonds, who run the whole show. And sure, this is a cartoon, it runs on cartoon logic, but if the show doesn't want to be thought of in terms of real-world systems like colonialism, then it shouldn't have spent so much time throwing around words like colony. Simply put, you can tell that this show was written by people who had great intentions and were reasonably well informed, but that most of the broad strokes for change your mind and the whole overarching plot were locked in since, 2015, which is a long way from the current context. Everything about Spinel works so much better than what they did with the Diamonds, even though it's similar in many ways, because what they did with the Diamonds was devised before the current context. The one scene, perhaps the most important scene, to sell this whole new angle, is the very first scene, because it says, oh, we've jumped forward 2 years, and part of the reason they made that decision is that Steven has spent the last 2 years fixing society everywhere. And that's good because it acknowledges that work needs to be done, but also it doesn't try to go into the nitty-gritty of how exactly they fixed society. Like, are you a Marxist now? Everything's Marxist now. Do you have an opinion about cops? Steven Universe agrees with you. Probably. It's a cheap trick, sure, but it's appropriate here because this is a cartoon, and it's much better than Steven saying, and I'm borrowing a joke from my friend Barry here, well, we thought really hard about a police force, and how do you enforce laws and prevent criminality without running a monopoly on state violence? It's fine. It's cartoon logic, and this is a cartoon, and that's in the creative team's wheelhouse, I think. Spinel in general is great. She was created as a toy, her psychology engineers to latch onto the first person she sees. Early on, she gets reset with her own side, and latches onto Steven, declaring herself his best friend. Over time, it becomes clear that she has the same obsessive bond with Pink Diamond. I read Spinel and her whole story as not so much being a metaphor for BPD, as just Spinel outright having BPD, albeit a cartoon version of it. I haven't seen anyone else on YouTube say this. I'm sure it's occurred to someone, but the only way I can see Spinel is as a BPD person who doesn't know how to deal with having a favorite person, or how to engage with that in an appropriate way, or how to deal with being ghosted by her favorite person. If you don't know, favorite person means someone upon which the BPD person has an unhealthy emotional dependence. In a flashback, we see Pink lie to Spinel and leave her forever. What Pink Diamonds did is obviously terrible, but it chimes true with real-world things of people on the receiving end of the favorite person dynamic getting overwhelmed and acting rashly. You don't really see this in anime TV at all, let alone serious adult prestige dramas. You don't really see this kind of nuanced and careful depiction of mental illness, something that shows the pain suffered by the BPD person and also the pain that she inflicts on others, and takes both seriously. In conclusion, Steven Universe the movie is great, and I like it. It's very good. I'm not opposed to criticizing this show. You can tell because I criticized this show in this video, but I am opposed to criticizing any art or any storytelling in a way that is mean-spirited or in bad faith, or doesn't engage with what it's actually trying to do, because that just leads you down a silly road real fast. Thanks for watching. I have a Patreon. Beepity boop. Thanks. Bye.